So, if you've been watching the news lately, you might have noticed outside all the banking crisis that's been going on, there's been an altercation that's happened between the U.S. and Russia over the Black Sea. So, for those of you who don't know, basically what happened was you had a U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone that was flying over the Black Sea. I'm going to assume somewhere close to Crimea or the Russian coastline, and presumably this thing might have been, I don't know, scouting or conducting some sort of surveillance into the Black Sea. Anyhow, Russia took issue with this. They scrambled one of their fighter jets to intercept it, and it seemed like there was a mid-air collision where the fighter jet turned out fine, but the U.S. Reaper drone was not, and it crashed. Anyhow, we've been learning some stuff about this. I think this happened like yesterday, and so apparently, from what I can figure out, it seems as though this fighter jet was harassing the drone for a while, flying dangerously close, and then it flew almost as close as it possibly could and dumped fuel in the same maneuver. And so we have this video here from Fox News. I'm not going to play it, but I will drag the timeline so you can kind of see things change. Well, if it works. Or maybe we can just play it like this. I don't know. I turned off the sound, so shouldn't interrupt too much. Well, if we could get past a Verizon commercial. Anyhow, I'll just go ahead and keep talking while this takes its time. Anyhow, U.S. officials have released a video that shows a Russian Su-27 fighter jet colliding with the propeller of a U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone. The video released by the U.S. military's European Command on Thursday came amid a race to secure the downed American aircraft. Russian ships are at the MQ-9 drone crash site in the Black Sea, a U.S. defense official told Fox News Thursday. Russia sent ships to search the debris field almost immediately following the crash. Go figure. I mean, this is a chance to collect intelligence on U.S. hardware. I'm sure they'd like to know that kind of stuff, considering that the U.S. is basically supporting Ukraine. Russia tried to, they wasted no time. This part of the Black Sea is 4,000 to 5,000 feet deep, so that's going to be a bit of a challenge. The U.S. military has no ships in the Black Sea, so let's go ahead and look at an image maybe of U.S. MQ-9 Reaper drone. So MQ-9 Reaper drone. General Atomics. Let's see if we can find some information about the dimensions. Origins, operation, testbed upgrades. I think this is a fairly large design. Here we go. 150 to 170 knots with a 66-foot wingspan, 20 meters. So that's a pretty big aircraft. Here we have an image. MQ-9 taxiing on Afghanistan 2007. There's a Humvee in the background. That is a pretty big aircraft. And that's the propeller in the background. So the idea that the Russian jet is able to kind of clip it potentially on purpose, that makes sense. And obviously, I guess everyone's kind of worried that, this is an aggressive act by Russia. It depends whether or not the pilot was ordered and intentionally knocked this thing out of the sky. Obviously, the fighter pilot didn't use his guns or his missiles to take the thing down. So it's kind of like in a bit of a gray area as to whether or not this was intentional. My guess, if I had to speculate, I would say that the Russian pilot, was probably ordered to nudge this thing out of the sky, damage it so that it can stop looking in on Ukraine. Because for those of you who don't remember, let's see, where is it? I had the story pulled up some time ago. Now get rid of that. That's not it. All right. That's all right. So let's see. What keyword shall we use? Russian Black Sea flagship Moskva sunk. There we go. NBC News. U.S. intel helped Ukraine sink Russian flagship Moskva, officials say. So for those of you who don't know, this was a few months ago. I guess, April 14th last year. Anyhow, what happened was the U.S. had some intelligence on the movements of the Russian flagship Moskva. It was operating in and around the Black Sea. They knew its approximate location or its movements. They shared that with Ukraine. Ukraine then probably used that to help sink that ship. So if you want to know why it is that Russia might have been motivated to knock this plane out of the sky, it's right there for you. The U.S. is supplying Ukraine with intelligence to help them in the war effort. That kind of, in a way, makes U.S. a kind of a soft participant. I mean, the U.S. is supplying Ukraine with guns, money, weapons, and intelligence. And intelligence is a really key factor in warfare. I'm sure Most people probably are aware of that. If you know where a thing is, it's a lot easier to shoot at it. Duh. But this makes the U.S. essentially a participant. And there's no other way to characterize it. So when Russia is looking at this whole situation, they're seeing the U.S. helping Ukraine. Ukraine would not be as effective if it weren't for U.S. help. And the U.S. is just saying, but I'm not actively shooting at you, so you can't hurt me. Well, Russia's response is basically, well, I'm not going to have to shoot at you, but I'm going to push your hardware out of my area. I mean, so the controversy is that this did in fact occur over international waters. International, yeah. Our MQ-9 aircraft was conducting routine operations in international airspace when it was intercepted and hit by a Russian aircraft, resulting in a crash and complete loss of the MQ-9. U.S. Air Force General James Hecker, command of U.S. Air Forces Europe and Air Forces Africa, said in a statement. So yeah, that's the gist of it. This happened in international airspace, so therefore it's like, well, the U.S. is allowed to be there, but when you have this thing flying at who knows how high, let's find our operational range, or how high can this thing fly? I think it said 50,000 feet somewhere. Let's control 50,000 feet right there. Reapers can be armed with Hellfire missiles as well as laser-guided bombs and can fly more than 1,100 miles at altitudes of up to 50,000 feet. Now, I don't know exactly how far you can see from 50,000 feet high in the sky, but if I had to take a rough guess, you could probably see most of the Crimean Peninsula. And obviously, these drones are going to be equipped with some really powerful cameras to see what's going on. And Russia, if you don't know, holds the Crimean Peninsula. Like, how well defended is Crimea? Ukraine's Crimea conundrum. Let's go with that one. Let's see. Ukraine forces began attacking Crimean targets in April. The anti-ship missile, the Black Sea Fleet, Moskva. I don't know. Let's go to images because there might be some stuff on Google about some known things in the area. But the gist of this basically is that Crimea is basically a fortress peninsula. Russia has spared no expense in trying to fortify it because that is obviously it's a piece of land that they want. I would speculate, and some others have speculated, that the reason why Russia invaded Ukraine, let's take this map for example, is that they wanted to basically take enough of eastern Ukraine to create a land bridge into Crimea because their only way in is through a boat, through a bridge. And if you may recall, earlier in the war, I believe it was Ukraine that attacked that bridge and damaged it. So let's say Ukraine damages bridge into Crimea. Russia's government has ordered contractors to finish repairs to a key bridge linking annexed Crimea to Russia by July 2023. The bridge was damaged by a blast last Saturday, which officials say left at least 3 people dead. So Crimea Bridge. So yeah, basically back in July, this thing was attacked. Russia has to fix it. Here's an image. Basically looks like a two-sided highway. Missile clearly down this whole section of it. But if Russia wants to move supplies in and out of Crimea, and Crimea is an important port to them because they currently control it, you got to go by this bridge. It's all surrounded by water. But lately, since Russia has basically annexed parts of Ukraine and is trying to hold it, what you essentially get is a situation where Russia can go around that bridge and has a land route, which is obviously a lot more durable than a bridge that can be blown up at any point in time. So, these are all important considerations when you think about this. And then, of course, there's the issue of Article 5, where basically people are worrying that since the U.S. did, in fact, have its drone knocked out of the sky by Russia in what is logically or presumably an intentional act, does that trigger Article 5? But then you also have to account for the fact that the U.S. likely or may have blown up Nord Stream 2, which is also an act of war in and of itself. So this is, I don't know, man. This is all crazy stuff where you have to account for the fact that both sides are conducting like questionable actions that are like, nobody seems to be really wanting to go to World War III, but they're towing the line of what can be acceptable, blowing up pipelines or knocking drones out of the sky. It's not an action either side's probably going to officially confirm as being intentional, or they probably won't claim full responsibility for it, because if they did, then there would be real world consequences. I mean, imagine if the U.S. government admitted that, yeah, we were the ones behind blowing up that pipeline. I mean, right now, what they said, there was a pro-Ukrainian group behind it. Let's see, pro-Ukrainian group behind Nord Stream. Yeah, New York Times. Intelligence suggests pro-Ukrainian group sabotaged the Nord Stream pipeline. Which, yeah, I know the name of the Nord Stream, or that pro-Ukrainian group. It's called the U.S. and Norway. If you want my speculation, that's what it seems. Because if you remember Seymour Hersh's reporting, now I have to. It's worth remembering that his sources are anonymous, and the thing with anonymous sources is that you should never fully trust them. It could be complete crap. You don't know. But if I have to think logically, the U.S. said that it was likely Russia that blew up their own pipeline. Why would they do that, first of all? I believe that the justification that they used for that whole idea was that it was an attempt to basically hurt Germany by basically shutting off the supply of oil or gas or whatever was traveling through the pipeline. I think it was gas. That doesn't make sense, because if you wanted to, you could just turn off the pipeline, right? You can just seal it up, close it. Pipeline doesn't work anymore. You would accomplish the same thing, and you wouldn't damage a vital piece of infrastructure. And when you can force Germany to abide by whatever it is you want, then you can sell them the gas and you make money. So why would you blow up a source of money, or which is also a source of leverage? It doesn't make sense. What would make more sense is if the US decided to blow it up, and the result of that is essentially Russia's leverage and source of money is gone. Sure, you screw over Germany in the process, but maybe you work out a deal to help them out later on anyway. Or maybe you say, well, screw it, just burn the bridge. I don't know, man. What I do know is that I don't like what the situation is going on in Ukraine. I don't like the fact that Russia invaded. I don't like the fact that the U.S. is supporting Ukraine. I don't like any of it. I mean, I don't want the Ukrainians necessarily have to be subjugated to full annexation, but I also don't want to risk a war with a nuclear power. I mean, this is a territorial dispute on Russia's border. And they're using all sorts of justifications about how Crimea is mostly Russians ethnically and how a lot of eastern regions are similar in that way. So it does raise the question of, is it worth trying to help Ukraine retake these territories? But then again, it's like, do you just make a deal with Russia and cut Ukraine out of the process and basically say, well, screw you, we don't really care what happens? I mean, we did make a promise to Ukraine to protect them in the event that because back in the 90s, when the Soviet Union fell apart, we made a deal with Ukraine that we will protect your independence provided you give up your nuclear weapons. And so, to that extent, the US does have an obligation to Ukraine, not to just leave them in the wind. So, I don't know, man. You need a way of trying to work this out peacefully. And I don't want the US to have to lose face over this, but at the same time, it doesn't seem like it's a valid expenditure of money and resources from my perspective. I think it risks nuclear war with a nuclear power. I don't think it's worth getting involved in. But the US did give its word, so you're kind of pinned in a corner there. I don't know. This kind of stuff makes me think about Washington's farewell address, where he worries about having alliances with foreign nations. Now, obviously, at the time, he was referring mostly to Europe, but that advice can basically extend to every country across the world at this point in time. Don't have permanent alliances, because what happens is it just drags you into unnecessary relationships or conflicts. It's much easier if you remain independent and pursue your own interests. Unfortunately, the US is locked in this thing, and until a peace deal is found, if one is ever found, this war is going to keep going on. Anyhow, thanks for listening this long. Again, I do this channel mostly as a side project or as a kind of a hobby, just because I think it's kind of fun. I like talking about the news, and I don't know. I don't always get to talk about the news as much as I want to with the people around me, so I mean, this is just kind of a creative outlet for me, I guess. Anyhow, thanks. Have a good one, and stay safe. Bye.